Hey guys and gals, it's Dr. Marcy, and I had an interesting opportunity to respond to a direct message today, and I thought that the message was something that a lot of people could actually learn from and use when they go into any situation that happens to be medical. And also, it might help explain the difference between what someone does when they work with a functional medicine coach, when they work with a functional medicine practitioner, and when they are working with an MD trained in very traditional Western medicine who doesn't break outside of their scope ever. So, I posted last week some information about neurotransmitters that are actually important in chronic inflammation and chronic pain. And those neurotransmitters, a lot of people believe, are only produced in the brain with the exception of acetylcholine, which we know is produced in the liver and the pancreas. But a neuroendocrinologist made a comment on one of the posts that I was wrong, and it was only produced in the hypothalamus, dopamine specifically, in the hypothalamus and in the substantia nigra. However, the first study that I could find that had any real large numbers was from 1997 that said that the gut microbiota actually played a role in dopamine production, and that there was some amount of dopamine produced outside of the brain, which means some amount of dopamine not produced in substantia nigra or the hypothalamus, which is important. Dopamine is a catecholamine, and if you look at catecholamines, they have receptors in different parts of the body, and they are very important for different functions, including smooth muscle, like your gut, and also metabolic processes within your body. But here's the problem. You, as a human, are one ecosystem. One large, giant, amazing, fascinating ecosystem. I mean, truly fascinating. And in traditional Western medicine, your one ecosystem has been broken down into 44 specialties with like 88 subspecialties. And a great example that I can give you of how sometimes forgetful each individual specialist is from the physical therapy and orthopedic world is that I have a specialty in treating complicated shoulder dysfunction, particularly in overhead sport athletes and swimmers. And part of this comes from wanting to know about my own injury from dislocating my shoulder when I was 14 playing softball, and then having some issues with swimming and chronic dislocations and subluxations, having a surgery to correct it, and then making sure that ultimately I could swim any stroke again that I wanted to at the speed that I wanted to. I had a client come into me who had a shoulder surgery. She had a rotator cuff repair, and it was a pretty complex rotator cuff repair. There were 7 anchors put in her shoulder, a ridiculous amount. And she was in like week 6 of her rehab. So we were starting to actually, so when they put that many anchors in, we get limited on how much motion we are allowed to let occur because we don't want to undo the anchors basically, and we don't want to damage the tissue. And just like if you've had an ACL repair, you're told that weeks 6, 7, and 8 are the most crucial and times for possible re-injury. Similar thing happens with shoulder surgery, right? There's a time where your shoulder is pretty vulnerable, and we want to be careful with it. So we're getting to the point where we can improve her range of motion by bigger leaps and bounds, and we can do more activity. And she starts developing headaches. And she went in for a visit with her orthopedic surgeon after she saw me, and I had told her the headaches are directly related to your shoulder. Don't worry about it. I'm going to work on some musculature, and that's going to resolve. It is directly related to the shoulder, though. And she went to the orthopedic surgeon, and he said, your physical therapist doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. He only did shoulder surgery. He forgot that there is a ton of musculature that attaches the shoulder blade to the spine at the level of the rib cage, but also up into the base of the skull. Not to mention that you only have one bony attachment of the shoulder joint to the body, and that actually happens right here. This tiny little joint right here, called the SC joint. This is what attaches your shoulder to the body on a bony level. Everything else is a muscular attachment. Every single thing. If ribs 1 through 7 don't move correctly, the shoulder doesn't move correctly. All of that is controlled by muscle function. But this surgeon said, no way, not related. There is a muscle that attaches from the corner of your shoulder blade up into the neck and the base of the skull. If I can get that muscle to release, I can get your headaches to go away. It's guaranteed. If you're having shoulder problems, that's the issue. Your shoulder problem can also cause you low back pain, which can cause you hip pain, and it can be diagonal to the other side. So when I'm looking at a shoulder patient, I am literally looking at from the knee joint up, because I know that it's affected by all of those things and can affect all of those things. So when someone says, you have a problem with this, and they're a specialist, and they don't see your other symptoms, they are missing you as a whole. They are missing your ecosystem. And it's not their fault. It's that they've been trained so highly in what they do, and they have to know so much about what they do that they don't have room for all the other stuff. And they forget that, oh, well, if this is happening here, we could have a problem somewhere else. And one of the biggest places I see this isn't even neuroendocrinology. It's GI docs and doing gastric bypass surgery of any kind. Because malnutrition affects the entire ecosystem. And yes, I understand your patient is morbidly obese and they could die. But did you tell them they needed liquid vitamins from now on and that there were certain ones that they would have to take forever? Did you tell them that the liquid vitamins need to be held in their mouth for 90 seconds? And probably some of those should be taken one-on-one? Did you tell them that having the surgery wasn't going to change the thought process that got them to the morbid obesity in the first place? Did you tell them that the inability to break down proteins and fats could lead to a neurodegenerative disorder, including paresthesias? There's a lot that goes on in the body that is interconnected. And we have to remember that your specialist is specialized in their area, and they don't look at the whole body. And that's why there's so much miscommunication on medical diagnosis. This is also the problem that functional medicine is trying to solve. We have to stop looking at the one tree and see the entire forest, see the entire human being. Don't be mad at your specialist for not understanding. They're working inside their expertise.